And thank you for staying with us. The Bronx Private Industry Council has been working with partners for Rap for Bronx, World Central Kitchen, and the Bronx Community Relief efforts to provide more than 1.8 million prepared meals to the community, up to 1,800 grocery bags per week to families, and more than 29,000 pounds of fresh produce to homes and community partners. The Thinkubator is continuing their work tackling the issue of food insecurity within our community. And joining us now to share a little bit more is the Thinkubator's Assistant Director of Internships and Special Projects, Sharon Wellington-deAnda, also Lead Facilitator and Manager of Youth Voice, Julian Joyner, and also the Internship Student, Naomi Okunrobo. And thank you so much for being with us all.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we talk about the borough of the Bronx, we talk about New York City, you know, food insecurity is huge, but you guys are really doing a great job of getting food out there and really trying to fill the gap. So Sharon, a little bit about the work that you're doing.
Well, we started the work basically in response to COVID-19. And COVID-19 uncovered a lot of the food insecurity that was in the Bronx and actually made it worsened. It worsened with the epidemic. And basically, Judy Diamond and the Diamond Foundation, James and Judy Diamond Foundation, basically reached out to our organization and asked us with the Bronx Community Relief effort to sort of spearhead relief efforts and coming up and working with individuals like Michael Blake and different organizations and restaurants, organizations like Rap for the Bronx, Rachel Chalop Powers, Shana McCormick, World Central Kitchen. We basically started a program of working with grassroots community-based organizations and serving our community. That was our mission. Both me and Julian worked really hard in coordinating those efforts. We reached quite a few people. We worked with over, I think it was over 70 different community-based organizations, and we served hundreds.
And Julian, talk to us about facilitating, because I know you're the lead facilitator, bringing things together. Talk about the work that you did in terms of, you know, that partnership with people.
Sure. You know, so people were essential to us really coalescing this. And I think that Sharon touched upon, you know, a really great point. You know, in speaking with Judy and helping and having her help us coalesce exactly what it is that we needed to do. One, we knew that there was an immediate need for food that needed to be addressed. So there were folks in the Bronx, you know, some of whom were in our own community. Sharon and I are both from the Bronx. So we had, you know, an innate desire to be able to help folks of our own community who were, you know, right here in our own backyard. We wanted to be able to support the most vulnerable first, you know, so folks who were elderly, folks who were disabled, who weren't able to go out and get meals, which was really the impetus of us, you know, coordinating all of these different deliveries that we had through World Central Kitchen and Rap for the Bronx. Another thing that we really wanted to do was to be able to, you know, support the local businesses that had already been associated with the Bronx Private Industry Council. You know, so prior to COVID, we had a coalition of about, you know, 37 different members of, you know, small businesses who were really impacted by and continue to be impacted by COVID. You know, so one of the things that we really wanted to do was to be able to, you know, speak to those small business owners, help support them, and make sure that they were able to, you know, retain their employees and meet the needs of the people in the community.
And Naomi, you had the opportunity to serve as an intern in your internship. Talk about what you learned this year through your internship.
Yeah, during the summer, I worked with the Thinkubator and Rap for Bronx, and I kind of worked behind the scenes, kind of doing some office work. But through that, I was able to have like a bigger picture of food insecurity in the Bronx, like working with Shana and working with Rap for Bronx. We went to a community garden, La Finca del Sur, at the end. So it's like seeing how urban gardening and urban farming really impacted the community was nice to see at the end. And we talked about like helping the community, helping get produce through urban gardening and farming. So yeah, that's what I learned. And it was a really great experience.
Yeah. And so what are we looking at when we talk about food insecurity? I know that it was already big prior to COVID, but Sharon, give us a little bit more about what has been post-COVID for people now, because we've got more people unemployed, more families are really struggling in terms of trying to make ends meet. So the situation has gotten more desperate.
It has, with more people unable to basically buy fresh food, basically care for their families. There are a lot more individuals, actually whole families, who are now suffering. One of the things that Naomi learned through working with our program, and she sort of wrote this into a really great paper, I really want to highlight her paper, is the food deserts. There are the lack of produce found in the Bronx in supermarkets, and how that affects health and nutrition, is only exacerbated when you have something like a pandemic like COVID that now cuts off food supplies, um, and you have people not being able to afford fresh produce, fresh fruit, all the things that are essential to the well-being of our community. So our response and working with, especially Rap for the Bronx, was able to basically, through a network of a number of different organizations, was able to literally pack grocery bags of fresh produce, fresh fruits, and able to distribute those things, and then working to incorporate that into our educational programs and the offerings that we're having for summer as well as fall. Basically, it was something that we considered, transformative education, because we were educating ourselves. We were learning as we were going, and we were really learning as we were going. None of us had ever dealt with a pandemic before. No, I have 20 years of case management, academic advisement skills, so I'm able to do a lot of operational and work, but I never dealt with the need and the abject need. One of the places we had the most impact was with Bronx Works Food Pantry. They had Grand Concourse. They Julie Spitz and I worked. I mean, we've worked so well together. She's a wonderful woman, and she has been running that food pantry literally for years. The food pantry, the first week of COVID, in April 4th, April 4th, that week, we noted that she served over 200 individuals. By the following week, she served over 500, and it just kept growing, and it's still growing. People
Right.
are coming from different places so that they're able to feed their families. So the work that we're doing, and we no longer do that work. We're sort of focusing on our programs, but even in focusing on our programs, we are impacting food security. We're impacting the programs that we work with. Julian is currently working with World Central Kitchen, still making sure hot meals are being served to the Bronx community, because that's still a need. We have
Right.
people who are still, due to actually contracting COVID, not being able to go out to shop for groceries, not being able to cook. They need to be helped and assisted. And we want to make sure, one of the great things I did learn, and we all sort of felt, the amount of community that we actually felt in the Bronx, because it was literally the Bronx community that rose up to help. And even though we're all parts of different organizations, we all have an attachment to the Bronx. So that was
Yeah.
really cool. That was
And Julie, let me bring you in here, talking about your work with World Central Kitchen, and also the things about education and advocacy, right? Because it still needs to go on. People still need to be educated and informed. Give us a little bit about your work with World Central Kitchen, and then also the work of advocacy.
Sure, I'd love to. So the work that we did with World Central Kitchen, like Sharon said, really started in early April. And I just want to highlight that that was, Sharon's first month, and she really was able to jump in there and be a big champion for this work. Um, so, back in April, we were able to start, phase 2 of the World Central Kitchen food program. So, with that, in partnership with, Michael Blake, some other folks who had previously been involved in this work, we were able to, really coalesce a team of folks. And so, our operation, we dispersed hot meals to different community-based organizations in the Bronx. Like I said before, we really wanted to have a focus on folks who were most in critical need. So making sure that we were feeding senior citizens, making sure that we were feeding students as well, because the youth are a huge component of the work that we do. We want to be able to ensure that, when students are looking for opportunities, that they can look right here in their own backyard in the Bronx. And we're huge proponents of, students being able to have these different opportunities here. In working with World Central Kitchen, one of the things that came out of that in terms of actually meeting the needs of the students was this really great partnership that we had, as part of the Bronx community relief effort. We teamed up with Mott Haven Bar and Grill, a couple of well-known chefs. So Chef Kwame of Top Chef fame, and then Chef Andy, who was formerly of Suyo. They volunteered their time. They reached out and said, hey, we're working chefs. We really want to be able to make a difference here in the Bronx. How can we help out? And one of the things that we were able to do was coalesce colleges in the Bronx. So Hostos, Lehman, BCC, and we were able to have a food drive for college students because many of them were at home. Many of them didn't necessarily have access to jobs, which were impacted by COVID. And being that youth are our focus, we really wanted to be able to have a meaningful way to be able to meet their needs. And then also, show them what was available.
Naomi, I'm gonna end this segment talking to you real quick, talking about youth. Talk to us about what you learned through your experience in terms of you wrote a paper, you're able to communicate to others your experience. If you could share with us what that experience was like.
Yeah, of course. My experience at Rapper Bronx was very interesting. I got to learn more about urban gardening and urban farming, about food insecurity in the Bronx. I worked behind the scenes, kind of doing office work, but I still did some research on it while doing the internship, and it did inspire me to write my paper on it. It was actually for my AP environmental science class, talking about, you have to talk about, devise a plan on how to overcome a certain environmental injustice in your neighborhood. So I decided to talk about food deserts and food swamps. And I feel like the way to really capture what we really want to do and how to overcome it is to see how it really impacts the Bronx, which is through racism and low-income neighborhoods. So food deserts and food swamps are directly a product of racism and redlining in the Bronx and in many other places. So I want to make that connection early in my paper. And later on, I talked about 3-step system on how to overcome it. So the first step is to really get into urban farming and urban gardening and bring the community together to grow produce. And my second plan was to bring that produce to bodegas and farmers markets, because bodegas are more common than supermarkets. You see bodegas on every corner and they don't really serve healthy food. So I feel like bringing the produce from the urban farms to the bodegas will really make a big impact and make people have healthy diets. And the last step is encouragement, because this can go all down the drain if we don't encourage Bronx residents to use the produce. So I feel like we can make pamphlets, urban farms can make cooking lessons to encourage people to actually use the produce and incorporate it into their diets. So that's what I really learned through Rapper Bronx in my internship, and I like to put everything into my paper.
Well, no, well done, well done. I think everything that you said is actually what we call in the hood facts. Thank you so much, Naomi, Julian, Sharon. Thank you for being with us here on Open.
Thank you so much for having us. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
No worries. No, listen, and we want to let you know if you want more information about them, all you have to do is visit their website at thinkubator.org. Once again, the thinkubator.org.